And good morning, good afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in and whether you're listening to us live on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network or if you're listening on one of the podcast platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, you name it. We're on most of the major podcasts as well. Also on Blackjack TV on the East Coast, and of course at Mile High Radio out in the Colorado area as well. So thank you very much for listening. It's Wednesday. It's Hump Day. That's what we call it today. And we got a lot to talk about today. Now, generally speaking, I try to keep the show somewhere around 34 minutes, somewhere in that time period, primarily because in all the statistical data that has come out, and there's a lot of it out there, trust me, if you're into podcasting, you know there's a lot of news out there going on almost every day. And one of the big stats that they seem to think of and come up with is that most podcast listeners only like to hear about 35 minutes as a maximum. So we try to keep it that category. But today there's so much to talk about. We're going to probably go over that limit, probably even closer to 45 minutes, depending on how quickly we get through. So let's get right down to action. But first of all, let me know what's going on today. We got NBA basketball. We're going to take a look at line movements and which way the pros are going in two games for today. We got Washington against Philadelphia and the Atlanta against Knicks. And of course, we got one hockey game on tap, too. We got Montreal against Winnipeg. So we're going to take a quick look at some hockey as well as so we can keep you hockey people out there happy with an occasional blur. But now that the NBA is going to start, slowing down now, you're not going to have as many games now once we get into round two of the NBA playoffs. We may have a little more time to start throwing in the hockey as well as the basketball and the baseball. And of course, baseball, we have four games on tap today. The Phillies against the Reds, the A's against the Mariners, the Padres against the Cubs, and the Marlins against the Blue Jays. So that, in addition to the golf tournament that's coming up this weekend, the Memorial out there in Ohio, that's at Jack Nicklaus's Country Club, that's where he kind of designed that particular course. He designed courses other places as well, but this is their annual event. It's called the Memorial in Ohio. So we'll talk about that as well. So let's get right down to business and let's see what happened yesterday as far as sports betting was concerned. To start out in the National Hockey League, the Lightning, a plus 100, beat the Hurricanes 2-1, and the underdogs are now 3-2 to start the second round. The Lightning in this situation now are 2-0. The favorites still lead, however, 25-22. That's not a lot. The road teams are 3-2 in this round so far, and the home and road teams are now at an even 25-25. Now, the overs, they still lead 3-2 in the round, but the unders lead totally at 26-24. So not much of a big difference as far as over-unders are concerned in the National Hockey League. But the one thing to kind of keep a look at, if you are betting hockey, and to kind of take a close look at, are the underdogs, because if you'll remember, if you've been betting all season long, you know how well the favorites have been doing. I mean, they dominated the regular schedule throughout the season. Now, the underdogs have kind of come back a little bit in the playoffs and have been doing very, very well. So that's the story with the NHL. And like I said, we will have one game that we're going to take a look at between Montreal and Winnipeg. Take a look at the line movement on that game, as well as to let you know in which direction the pros are going as well. Meanwhile, in the NBA, the favorites, they went 3-0 straight up and against the spread yesterday. Favorites really dominating yesterday. The Nets, 13-point favorites against the Celtics. Now, this is a game we talked about yesterday. And of course, the pros and everybody in the country was on the Nets. But we kind of mentioned that the Celtics may not be a bad bet in this game. And I'll tell you, they only won by 14 points. Okay. So if you would realize that by 12 points, you would have seen that if you would have taken the Celtics, you're 2 points away from having a winner in this situation instead of having to lay well over $1,000 on the Nets if you wanted them on the money line at least. Anyway, the Nuggets are they were 2-point dogs, favorites in the game, in a double overtime game. Once again, the pros had this one as well, and they beat the Blazers in the double overtime. So you had to really sweat that one out. The Suns being a 4.5-point favorite against the Lakers, and that was another game that the pros had as well. So they all covered in their wins, and so far the favorites are really dominating in the playoffs. They're 26-9 straight up. They're 24-11 against the spread. That's a phenomenal 68.6%. The unders went 2-1 yesterday. The overs still lead 18-16, and all three favorites were at home. So the home teams also went 3-0 against the spread, and they now take the lead 19-16 against the spread. Now, if you're into zigzag, the zigzag went 1-2 against the spread. Denver covered, but Boston and Los Angeles lost. They failed to cover, so they were 12-15 against the spread, which is at little over 44%. Zigzagging favorites are 9-2 against the spread. The dogs are 3-13 against the spread. The home zigzaggers are 8-8 against the spread. The road zigs are 4-7 against the spread. So I've gotten some emails on zigzagging. I understand you guys out there that you like it. So we're going to try to give you some results as we go along. The only time we really pay any attention to it, of course, is during the playoffs. You got to have two teams that are playing against each other and back-to-back games so you can have a game to play off of. Meanwhile, in Major League Baseball, the underdogs went 8-6. The Rangers and the Rockies closing as a pick'em as well. Now, the biggest upset were by the Cardinals. They were at a plus 175 on the money line, and they beat the Dodgers. What's going on out there in L.A.? Dodgers, this Lakers, all the big number one teams that were picked to win championships in their particular sports kind of having some trouble so far. And the Orioles were a plus 152 against the Twins. They won. They snapped the 14-game losing streak. Now, the favorites, they still lead. They're at almost 56%. The overs went 10-5 yesterday, but the unders still lead. The unders are at a little over 50%. So that's the story in baseball, basketball, and in hockey, and that's the story so far. So we're going to take our first break, and like we tell you, if this is the first time you've ever listened to the show, we're just going to let you know that we do take 3 breaks in the show. Each one is of about 1 minute duration. So keeping that in mind, when we do come back, we're going to take a look at the NBA, the 2 games that we're watching the line movement on, as well as see which direction the pros are going. We got Washington Wizards against the Philadelphia 76ers, the Atlanta Hawks, and the New York Knickerbockers. So we'll be back into the sports wagering zone right after this message. And welcome back. Welcome back to the Sports Wagering Zone. I'm Chris Pardo. We're here in Charlotte, North Carolina, coming to you live on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, podcasting on most of the major podcasts, such as iHeartRadio or Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're on most of the major platforms as well. We're also on Blackjack TV on the East Coast, and of course, milehighradio.com if you're out in that particular area. So let's get down to more business. Let's talk about the NBA because that's the big thing that's going on right now. Big happenings going on. The NBA playoff favorites, like we say, they continue to dominate on Tuesday, going perfect 3-0 against the spread. So right now, the favorites are 27-14 against the spread. That's 66% so far in this postseason. So if you look at it from a money perspective, if you bet $100 and you took every favorite, regardless, whatever happened, who's hurt, whatever, you just took every favorite on the spread during this entire postseason, you'd be up about $1,200, okay? Now, the short favorites, these are favorites of 5 or less points, went 2-0 against the spread yesterday, and they've improved up to 78%. So there's another situation. Had you bet them just overall, you'd have a nice piece of change laying in your pocket. So that's the story so far as the past is concerned. Now let's see what's coming up for today. At 7 o'clock tonight, the Washington Wizards, Philadelphia 76ers. This is Game 5 of the Eastern Division's first round series. The 76ers lead this series 3-1, and they can actually wrap it all up tonight with a win over the Wizards. The Wizards are coming off that big win, okay, in Game 4, 122-114. This way, they avoided elimination, and they're back in the game again. They won outright in that game as 8.5-point home dogs, but they still won the game on their own. Now, this Game 5 line opened with Philadelphia a 7-point home favorite. But look at it this way. The elephant in the room for this game is Joel Embiid. 76ers, he's their number one guy. He's their star. He's hurt, and he's expected to miss this game because of that injury that's been bothering him. So they may want to sit him, and and even if they have to forfeit the game because of that, they still have enough room because it'll be 3-2. They have 2 more games in which to play that they could win the title anyway. So more than likely, he will not be playing today. But still, despite that fact, unless they're not aware of it, the public isn't sure whether or not to lay the points, okay? However, we've seen the line drop down from 7 to 6.5. So what this means is that the pro money, probably because of the injury to Embiid, is backing the Wizards and taking the points. So the pros on the game between the Wizards and the 76ers are on the Wizards once again. They were on them the other day as well, and as you can see, they were on them, and of course they won that game, so they did pretty good. But in this particular situation, they're on the Wizards once again. The total opened at 230.5. It dropped down to 229.5. So the over is 3-1 so far in this series. Now, keep this in mind. When the total is 220 or higher, the over is at 68% so far in the postseason. Total of 220 or higher, the over is 68%. Now, the 3-1 in the series is at they're 3-1 up as far as the 76ers are 3-1 up in the series. They're also at minus 5,000 on the money liners favorites to go into the next round. The Wizards, they're at a plus 1400 long shot to come back and win tonight and come back and win the series. So you see the big discrepancy there. You got minus 5,000 as a favorite, plus 1,400 for the Wizards. So there's a shot there if you want to spend a couple of bucks, but it kind of looks kind of tough. They still have to come back and win 3 games. Okay, even though if they win tonight, they still have 2 more to come back. So more than likely, the 76ers look like still the favorites to win this particular section. So Washington against Philadelphia, the pros are on the Wizards, and of course, they're on the over as well. Now at 7:30 tonight, back to New York, the New York Knicks and the Atlanta Hawks. This is game 5 of the East's first round series. The Hawks lead the series 3-1, and they can knock the Knicks out with a game win tonight. But after they split those first 2 games, the Hawks have won 2 straight, winning and covering as short favorites both of the times. But now the series shifts back to the Garden in New York. This game, the line opened with New York a minus 1.5 point favorite at home. So some of the shops even opened at 1. Knicks being favored by 1 point, but right after that, they got bet up to 1.5. So the Knicks in this game, they have value as a short playoff favorite of 5 points or less. Now, that type of situation has evolved into having 18-5 against the spread, which is 78%. Okay. So again, short playoff favorites of 5 points or less are at 78%. Now, also analytically, New York has value because they're a buy low home favorite off of a blowout loss of 10 points or more. Now, that group of teams that come into that category are at 57% against the spread, not only this year, last year, or 2 years ago, but over the past 10 years. So the total hasn't moved off the opener of 208. The under is 3-0 against the situation numbers this series, leading 3-1. The Hawks are a minus 1,100 favorite to go into the next round. The Knicks are a plus 700 long shot to come back and win the series. So in this particular game, analytically, and the pros are on the New York Knicks in this game. So the 2 games we talked about today, the Wizards against the 76ers. The pros are on the Washington Wizards, taking the dog in this game. The Atlanta Hawks against the New York Knicks. The Knicks are a 1-point favorite, but you never know. But before game time, they might wind up being the underdog, but very close. It's a very close situation depending on how the money flows. But of course, they are the choice of the pros, the New York Knicks against the Atlanta Hawks. So that's the story in basketball so far. We're going to give you 1 game in hockey at 7:30 tonight. You got the Montreal Canadiens and the Winnipeg Jets playing against each other. So we're going to take our second break, and when we come back, we're going to take a close look at that game and kind of give you an idea as to the line movement and which direction the pros are going in that particular game. And we're also going to talk about the baseball games on tap as well. So let's take that second break. Let's get it out of the way, and we'll be back right after this. And welcome back. You're back in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo. We're coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina, right here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network and on most of your podcast platforms, such as Apple Podcasts. And I don't want to go on and on with those things every day. So you know where we are because you're listening to us right now. Anyway, just to recap the two basketball games that we looked at earlier, if you just happen to tune in, the Hawks against the Knicks. In that particular game, the pros and the analytics are on the New York Knicks. And of course, the game between the Sixers and the Wizards in Philadelphia, the pros on this game, they like the Wizards and taking the points in this particular matchup. Now, because now we're going to have less games played because a lot of teams are going to be eliminated in round one. Round two is kind of less teams involved, less games. So we'll have some time to try to take a look at some hockey action as well to try to give you some information if you like to bet hockey. If you've been a hockey bettor, you've kind of been hanging in with us over the past few weeks, even though we haven't been of much help to you. We're going to try to go a little more into that direction as well. It's just a lot of work to get done when you're trying to watch the line movement of three different professional games, seasons, and teams. So, you have to forgive us for that, but we'll try to make it up to you one way or another. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the one game that is on tap for tonight at 7:30 p.m., the Montreal Canadiens and the Winnipeg Jets. Now, this is game one of the Northern Division's second round. The Canadiens, well, they're coming off that big 3-1 win in Game 7 to beat the Leafs. Montreal was down 3-1 in that series, came back to win and move on to the next round. Meanwhile, on the other side, the Jets swept the Oilers 4-0 in round one. They won outright as a dog in all 4 games. The dog in all 4 games. This game one line, it opened with Winnipeg listed as a minus 115 home favorite on the money line, and Montreal a plus 105 road dog. Now, respected money, or the pro money as we call it, in this particular situation, have really come in on the Jets. They steam the Jets up from minus 115 to 135 on the money line. That is a huge, huge move. The favorites with the line move that's in their favor are at 65% so far in this postseason. Of course, the favorites have been doing very well all season long. The Jets also, they enjoy a massive rest against tired advantage in this particular game because Winnipeg, they played on May 24th while the Canadiens just played on May 31st. That's what happens when you win the round quickly, 4-0. Now you can rest the team, which is very important, especially in basketball and in hockey, okay, to get that time off, to rest, get those muscles, get those pains out of the way to come back and play. So in that particular, if you want to look at it from that perspective, as well, the Jets have an advantage as well. So the Jets have a full week rest advantage. We saw the Avalanche roll the Knights 7-1 earlier this week because they had a similar rest against tired advantage. So you can see how critical that is. We could also be looking at a low scoring game tonight. The total in this game is 5.5, with their juice being very heavy on the under at minus 140 on the money line. Now, the Jets are a short minus 135 favorite to win the series. The Canadiens are at a plus 110 as a dog to win the series. So in Montreal against the Winnipeg Jets, in this particular situation, the pros and the analytics seem to be pointing to the Jets without a doubt. Okay, you got that rest advantage, and of course the fact that they've done very, very well throughout the series. So we'll see what happens, but that's the story in that one hockey game that we're talking about for tonight. And like I said, we're going to try, if basketball kind of really slacks off the way we think it will leave us more time to get more involved into hockey as well. In the meantime, let's go take a look at a couple of baseball games. We've got 4 on tap to talk to you about today, so let's get going on those as soon as we can. The first game we're looking at, the Phillies against the Cincinnati Reds. And in this particular game, it's very close. The money line is somewhere around minus 102, 103. It's in that general area, so it's kind of a toss-up type of game. Vladimir Gutierrez is pitching for the Cincinnati Reds, and with the market being in that particular zone, we believe, and as well as the pros believe, that there's good value in betting on the Reds to beat the Phillies in this particular game. Now, it looks like the Reds will probably be slight favorites, and we kind of figure that they have a good chance of winning. So in this particular first game we're talking about between the Reds and the Phillies, the pros are on the Reds in this game. And again, it's very close. It's kind of a toss-up type of game, so the money's kind of coming in. The tickets are coming in pretty equal on it, so there may not be much movement on it, but it could possibly go the other way, but not for far. You may wind up, if you bet Cincinnati, you may wind up picking them up as a dog before the day is over, but kind of keep an eye on that line movement so that you can make your decision in the right direction. Another game we're looking at are the Athletics and the Mariners. In this particular game, the Oakland A's are set to face the Seattle Mariners with Sean Manaea and Chris Flexen currently the probable pitchers for this game. The Athletics are going to be favored in this game. They're at 140 on the minus side on the money line, so they're going to be on the heavy favorite side. But we kind of feel, and the pros kind of agree, that this game looks good for the Athletics, even at that particular number of 140 or higher. Okay. Now, in the past, the pros have been fading Flexen and taking Manaea all season long. And of course, you have to understand that now there are no plans to stop the Athletics money line because it's priced somewhere around minus 140. So in this particular situation, the pros like the Athletics. The first game we talked about between the Phillies and the Reds, very close game. Again, -1, -2 on the money line. Could go up to +1 or +2 before the day is over. But in that particular situation, we are, and the pros are on the Reds as well. So we have 2 more games to take a look at. We've got the Cubs and the Padres, and we also have the Marlins and the Blue Jays. So, well, let's get those out of the way, then we'll take our final break. So between the Padres and the Cubs, the pros are on the Cubs. Adbert Alzolay is pitching for the Cubs, and with the market consensus somewhere about 105, which is kind of low, okay, we believe there's good value here. And the pros seem to think the Cubs are the team to beat the San Diego Padres in this situation. Yeah, Fernando Tatis Jr.'s status is uncertain at this particular time, so depending on whether or not he plays or not is a good possibility as to which direction you might want to go because of the low money line. We estimate the chances of the Cubs to win this game are pretty good, and based on the current market price, it kind of looks like it may not be a bad bet, but it's going to be very close. -105, Cubs on the money line. Well, no problem. Meanwhile, the Marlins and the Blue Jays in this particular game, once again, the pros are on the Marlins at a +140, 145. Going to be up in that particular area with Pablo Lopez on the mound. We kind of feel that it's time to continue betting on the Miami Marlins to upset the Blue Jays. Now, I know that they lost their last 3 times that we were recommended by the pros, but including that 5-1 loss last night, but it looked like, and there's a good possibility that that trend may be reversed today, and that's the way the pros kind of look at it. So in this game, The pros like the Marlins once again. Like we said, we've had them 3 times before. As you know, if you've been betting them, you've had 3 losses, but now you might be able to recoup at this particular time at that high plus 140 situation as far as the money line is concerned. So once again, just to give you an idea, the 4 games in baseball we talked about, the Phillies and the Reds, the pros are on the Reds, the A's and the Mariners, the pros are on the A's, the Padres and the Cubs, they like the Cubs, and once again, in spite of the 3 losses in the past, they still like to stay with the Marlins to beat the Blue Jays as well. So that's the story as far as baseball is concerned. In basketball, the 2 games we looked at, the Wizards against the Sixers, the pros are on the underdog Wizards in this particular game. The Hawks and the Knicks being a 1.5 point favorite, depending on which sportsbook you're looking at, they like the Knicks in that particular game. And then, of course, in hockey, little bonus one for today, the Canadiens against the Jets. The pros are on the Jets in that situation. So that's the story as far as the betting recommendations for today, but we got one more to go. We still have to talk about the Memorial Golf Tournament in Ohio today, so we're going to take our final break, and when we do come back, that's the direction we're going to go. We're going to talk golf, the Memorial, and we'll be back right after this message. And welcome back. Welcome back to the Sports Wagering Zone. I'm Chris Pardo. Thank you very much for listening. We appreciate your patronage listening to the show. We would have no show if there wasn't a few guys out there. So thanks for listening. We're coming to you live, of course, on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network right here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Well, we talked about baseball. We talked about hockey. We talked about basketball. We got everything covered. One sport that also that we starting tomorrow is golf, the Memorial Golf Tournament. Okay. Now, in this particular tournament, we're looking at Jordan Spieth, and he is in this tournament. It's the Jack Nicklaus tournament, kind of, it's a course that he designed, okay? And Spieth is the second choice. He's at 16-1 in this particular situation. Now, he has 2 career top 10 finishes right there at that particular course. He was 3rd in 215. He was 7th in 219. And so far, because the odds may change, he is at 16-1. But the favorite this week is the guy who won last year. Okay, that's Jon Rahm. This year, of course, he is the number 3 player in the world. His price is cut to 11-1 because he did win last season. Now, a win in Nicklaus's event still has been a problem for Rory McIlroy, so he's at 16-1, but he does have 3 top 10s in his last 8 appearances, so he may be coming around. Okay. Meanwhile, the number 4 golfer in the world, Bryson DeChambeau, he's at 16-1, and he does have a victory. He won back there in 2018, but he has never really featured in any other appearance, and he's been really too busy getting in that fight with Brooks Koepka lately. So, you might want to think twice before you go on him. But of course, hey, he may be playing with a chip on his shoulders. I'm going to show Brooks what I can do and try to win this tournament. So we'll take a look and see. He won it back in 2018, so he does know the course pretty well. Now, Justin Thomas, who's number 2 in the world, he's at 16-1. He has 2 top 10s at the Memorial, and he finished second the other day at the Charity Open last summer. Now, here are some long shots as well, if you want to take a look at them. Tony Finau, he's at 25-1. He ended up 8th last year after being the 36-hole leader. He led after 36 holes. He wound up coming in 8th. He has 4 finishes of 13th or better at this particular site, and he has a good history on most of the Nicklaus type places that he has designed. His putter went a little crazy a couple of Sundays ago at the Colonial, losing a lot of strokes on the way. So he finished the week ranked 3rd in the field, and there he goes at, let's see, 25-1 was the latest we saw on him. Meanwhile, at 28-1 is Corey Connors. Well, he's kind of cooled down a bit from the great March and April that he's had, but of course, Connors finished 20th last week at the Colonial, and he once again was top 10 in the field for both the approach and going to the green. Meanwhile, Patrick Reed at 33-1. You have Gary Woodland. His game has slowly come back into shape after being well off the grid most of the season. Woodland has 3 top 6 finishers at this particular place, including a 5th last year at this course in Ohio. Charlie Hoffman's at 50-1. That's a good long shot for you. He shot the low on Sunday at the Colonial at a -5, but he finished tied 3rd last weekend. Hoffman comes into this year to the Memorial off his best ever finish last year. He finished 7th at this particular same tournament. So kind of take a look at some golfers that you might want to look at. If there's not enough action for you and everything else that's going on this weekend, you can take a look at golf. And once again, the usual favorites are still the favorites. There are some long shots in here that you might want to take a look at. This is a tournament that's in Ohio. Jack Nicklaus designed the course and, did a pretty good job with it because the guys have some problems with this course. So it's strong, it's tough, but it's big and it's well known. And of course, if you're interested, those are some of the golfers you might want to take a look at starting tomorrow. So once again, let's just recap what we talked about as far as our betting situations are concerned. In basketball, the Washington Wizards against the Philadelphia 76ers. The pros in this game like the Wizards, the underdog. They're looking for the Wizards to bounce back in this game. Meanwhile, the Hawks and the Knicks now are in New York at Madison Square Garden. Knicks are facing elimination in this game. Pros like the Knicks in this game, and you're looking at a very low -1, 1.5 situation as far as the Knicks are concerned. The pros are on the Knicks in this game. And of course, in the National Hockey League, we talked about the Canadiens against the Jets. And once again, the pros and the analytics, everything seems to point to the Winnipeg Jets in this game. One thing I was thinking about when you just want to get back to the NBA for a minute. If you bet the Lakers before the season started, and many people did, there's no doubt about it. They were hyped as the favorite. A lot of money came in on them. There are a lot of people that have bet on the Lakers. So here's just a thought that kind of came into my mind last night, and I thought I'd just share it with you so you could think about it, and it might be something that might work for you, especially if you did bet on the Lakers to win it all. Okay, or to win this particular round. Either way, it may not be a bad idea in the next game to take the Suns. And here's the reason. Because if you think that, I guess it's all over for the Lakers, they're going to lose. So you're out of that money already. If you hedge your bet and take the Suns, and if the Suns do come through, okay, at least you won't be hurt as badly. Again, depending on how much you bet, of course, on the game by betting on the Lakers. Okay. Now, if the Lakers do come on and win, of course, you don't win as much because you're going to lose on the other end because you're taking the Suns. But this is just one way of hedging that may be very good for you at this point in time, especially with the injuries that the Lakers have had. And that was a blowout. That was an embarrassment yesterday. So again, if you had them, put money down on them, you might want to hedge your bet now and take the Suns in the playoff game here now to win this first round. And this way you'll be covered on both ends, whichever happens. At least if the Suns do wind up winning, you won't lose as much on the Lakers that you bet. And if the Lakers wind up winning, you won't win as much as you would have if you just stayed with that. But then again, that's totally up to you. It's just a thought, just an idea that I came up with. And I thought I'd share it with you. But I leave, once again, as always, we leave the decision of what to do totally up to you. But it's something to think about, okay? Anyway, once again, I want to thank you very much for listening. It's hump day. It's Wednesday. We're coming down towards the bottom, towards Thursday, Friday. Then we're having the weekend. So, wow, here we are, ready to go in the other direction. So, once again, thanks for listening. We've been coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network and podcasting on most of your major podcast platforms. So, have a very pleasant hump day on Wednesday. And of course, if you're betting, I hope you have a profitable day as well. So, have a happy day and have a profitable day. Of course, if you do have a profitable day, more than likely, you'll have a happy day. But either way, enjoy the day. We'll be back again tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern, right here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. So until tomorrow, have a great day, have a profitable day, and we'll be back again at that time. No problem at all. Thanks for listening and have a very good day.